I love our show opener. I think it's the coolest thing ever. I want to say thank you to the team over at Killcliff. Thank you for helping make this show a thing. Thank you for delicious CBDs to help my knees. And so I want to introduce somebody who is pretty fucking awesome. I've known this dude for a long time now. We are in the same realm, I guess you could say, of content. He is coming across the great firewall of China. Ramsey Dewey, come on in. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Thank you, Rob. Doing well today. Thanks for asking, and thanks for having me on the show, man.
Well, thank you for being on the show, because without you, it would just be me, a floating head talking to no one, and that would be no fun.
I would watch it, dude. I would watch it.
I mean, it would be like you and maybe 3 other people, and I think one of them might be on some type of registry. I don't know. But for the people that do watch this show, and you don't know who Ramsey Dewey is, I have to say that I really enjoy his content. He puts out, or has in the past, he's put out a lot of stuff, but this dude has the best radio voice in the business, no matter if you've seen his content or not. You can just hear it now. It's great.
Well, I appreciate that, Rob. I appreciate the shout out. Man, I got so many comments this last week from people accusing me of having a fake voice. And it is mind-boggling to me to hear that. Like, do they think I'm going to sound like Mickey Mouse in real life or something? I don't know, man. It's
you're working with what you got, man. And like, I don't know. It kind of, in a way, I don't know if you ever remember this episode of South Park. There's the episode of South Park where Cartman tries to be the news announcer in the morning, and then he meets like very Casey Kasem type character who's got like perfect radio voice at the age of like 6. It's like you were just born with the gift, man. You just got it. That's awesome.
And that was basically me at 10 years old, man.
Reading morning announcements. This is Ramsey Dewey. But at the time, I guess you weren't coming from Shanghai, China, so you couldn't add that in. I assume.
Yeah, it just rolls off the tongue. New Plymouth, Idaho doesn't have the same sort of, it doesn't have the same vibe to it. That's where I grew up. So
that is true. I have to say, you picked some awesome fights that I want to talk about today, and our fantasy beef, you picked like one of my favorites ever. So I can't wait to talk about that one. But let's go and get the opener going with a past beef, which was Conor McGregor versus some old guy in a bar. Let's go and pull up the tail of the tape.
Yes.
Conor McGregor, he's 33 years old. He's about 5'8", 155 pounds. Notes, he really hated when people don't drink his whiskey for some reason. I don't know why he gets so upset, but he no longer owns that. He sold it for an assload of money. Desmond, he is 50 years old. He is the old guy at the bar. I actually thought he was much older than that. Apparently, he just is drinking. Maybe he's just an alcoholic and just looks rough. I don't know. But he's 5'10". He's about 175 pounds, I guess. I just threw something out there because for some reason I don't have this guy's actual stats. Note, he really doesn't like Conor McGregor's whiskey. So let's talk about that a little bit. So who you got in this tail of the tape matchup between Conor McGregor and some old guy?
Yeah, man, this was a fascinating matchup for a lot of reasons, and it turned into memes all over the internet. Everybody saw it. Everybody was speculating about how Desmond, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, got clocked with Conor's, I don't know if it was a best punch, but it was a sucker punch, man. You got sucker punch. You don't see that coming. Most people aren't braced for it. Generally, they go out. And he just shrugged it off like it was nothing. Just like, meh, what else you got? Now, what's so fascinating about this story, he took it like a champ, man. I think that's one of the reasons that this story just blew up all over the internet. Not just he hit a helpless old man. He hit a dude who just shrugged it off like it was no big deal. But again, what's so fascinating about this story to me is that it's not just a past beef. Like, it's kind of still ongoing. Like, I thought this was water under the bridge. I thought for sure that maybe Conor, maybe he had issued a public apology or something like that celebrities do, but no, he didn't. In fact, last year, he spent approximately 2 million euros to buy the Marble Arch pub where this incident happened, specifically so he could tell Mr. Desmond, no, you can't come in. Like, he is holding a grudge. This beef continues. So that's what we know. We've seen the tail of the tape. We've seen the height and the weight difference. But we've also seen that Mr. Keogh. I apologize for mispronouncing your last name. Irish names are hard. Yes, I'm just going to call him Desmond. Desmond took Conor's best punch by surprise, shrugged it off like it was nothing. And what we know now, Conor doesn't want Desmond anywhere near him. He's running, man. He's running. Conor is afraid of that man.
I mean, Desmond, I give him credit. And for anybody who has not seen this particular video, I actually have it right now. So let's go and pull that up. And let's go and take a look at the initial... the throwdown, if you will, and this old man taking it like a champ. Let's go ahead and play that. There they are. There's old man right there chilling, doing his thing. Conor McGregor's over there passing out glasses. It seems like he's trying to get everybody to take a shot. He goes up to the guy and he's like, hey, here, take a shot with me. And that guy's actual response was, I'm not going to drink that shit. Verbatim is what he actually said to Conor. And then Conor, I guess, got offended by that. And poured him a glass anyway. And then the guy's like, dude, I don't want your whiskey. It tastes like piss water. And then all of a sudden, Conor was like, piss water, I'll show you. And then he socks him right in the face. Bam. And that's a pretty good shot. Like, you could see that the guy's body, like, shakes. You could see he really cracked him. But the guy is either too drunk to feel it or too old to give a shit. I don't know which one it is, but he took it like a boss. And I got to give him credit. I think he has one of those Homer Simpson syndromes, where you can hit him in the head with a surgical 2x4 all day long, and then nothing would happen to him because he just can take shots like that. Maybe it's the booze, I don't know. But I gotta say, if we're going into deep water, Desmond might have this.
Yeah, man. People write him off because of the old thing, but 50 isn't that old. I mean, it is, but it also isn't. Like, there are plenty of outliers. Like my friend Matt Grant, he started jiu-jitsu at age 51, and he went on to become IBJJF Masters World Champion at white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, and now black belt. And he's in his 60s now, doing a fantastic job, setting an example for older guys everywhere. But, again, these are the outliers, generally speaking. But, again, we got those two things. He shrugged off Conor's, his power hand. Right, his power left. How many dudes in the octagon took that on the chin and just went to sleep? Right? Of course, that's old news. But again, people might say that Conor is simply holding a grudge by spending all this money, all this FU money just to tell Desmond, you can't come in this pub anymore because I'm still angry and bitter about that whiskey incident. But
you think he's ducking him?
What if deep down? What if he is ducking Desmond? What if he knows that if given a rematch, right, it would not go over his way? I mean, there's a weight advantage on Desmond's side. We saw that from the tail of the tape. I'm just saying.
Also, if, let's say that, because the show, we can play with bend the rules here a little bit. And so let's say hypothetically this isn't a fist fight. Let's say this is a drink off. I got to tell you, I've seen Conor McGregor smash drunk. Like, he's put out videos of himself tipsy as shit. And it seems like maybe he can't handle his booze as much as Desmond. I call for a rematch, but instead of it being a fist fight, I say you have a good old-fashioned Irish drink-off, right? And then the loser gets the bar. Or the loser can no longer step foot in the bar. The winner gets the bar. That's how it should be.
There you go. There's more than one way to throw down, man. More than one set of rules, or lack thereof.
Exactly. Well, I got to say, I enjoyed that one. I really like that past beef that you picked, but this next one's my favorite. Let's go and go to the fantasy beef. We have Abe Lincoln versus Joseph Smith. That's right, the prophet himself. We have Abe Lincoln, age 56. He was 6'4", weighed about 180 pounds. He was 56 when he passed away. Note, he is literally in the Wrestling Hall of Fame with a record of over 300 wins with only one confirmed loss. And yes, that is true. And I have so many Abe Lincoln stories, it's ridiculous. So I can't wait to get to those. Joseph Smith are also known as the Smith, formerly known as the Prophet, if you will, if we're going to go into more of a Prince kind of deal. Age, he's 38, height 6 foot. He weighed roughly about 200 pounds. So he was kind of a bigger dude. Note, he also was a very avid catch wrestler, apparently, to a lot of scripts and things that people wrote about him in the history books, that he liked to wrestle. And I want to kind of talk about that a little bit because he kind of came off like a little bit of a douche.
Oh man, this is This is a tough one. Like most people, most wrestling fans and wrestling historians are very aware of Abe Lincoln's credentials and not as familiar with Joseph Smith. Within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, it's pretty well known folklore about Joseph Smith's wrestling prowess. He was by all accounts a tough guy. He grew up doing manual labor, farm work, etc. According to reports, he was over 6 feet tall, somewhere between 180 to 200 pounds. So he may, depending on the point of his life, have had a weight advantage. Now, Smith trained in or competed in 3 different wrestling styles, one of which was catch wrestling. But I have to say, catch can was not his forte. His favorite wrestling style was a regional folk wrestling style with very similar rules to Mongolian wrestling or Chinese northern jacketed wrestling, shuai jiao, where the objective is to throw the other guy on the floor while remaining standing. But then the third style is a style that I can find very, very little information about the internet, but it was very popular in the eastern U.S. and New England back in the 1800s, called side hold wrestling. Huh. Now, he did compete in all 3 of these styles, and from all accounts, he was best at throwing. Now, as far as I can tell, Abraham Lincoln was the more experienced catch wrestler, right? I mean, the dude basically is credited with the invention of the choke slam, the popular move still used in the WWE to this day. I mean, Abe Lincoln, he is the godfather of the choke slam. But again, Joseph Smith Jr., very formidable opponent. And, both of these men actually have a lot in common. Both wrestlers, both actually ran for president of the United States, both attempted to abolish slavery. One was successful. And again, back to the wrestling question, though. I think as much as I love all the Mormon folklore around Joseph Smith, I would have to give it to Abe Lincoln, except for one thing. Again, because of the experience, except for that one thing, his one loss, Abe Lincoln's one loss. Let's see, who was that to? Lorenzo Dow Thompson, right? Nicknamed Hank Thompson, right? He lost that in a sudden death overtime. If you're not familiar with the rules of catch wrestling, it's basically the best of 3 falls. A fall is a pin or a submission. Basically, you win by pin or submission. You got 2 in a row, you win, like rock, paper, scissors, basically. But if the match goes on too long without those 2 falls occurring, there's a sudden death overtime. And what happens is the first wrestler to get a throw or 2 throws, depending on the agreement of the rules, wins the match. And that is how Abe Lincoln lost, because he was thrown by, Hank Thompson, right? Now, we know by all popular accounts, Joseph Smith was more adept at throws than he was at submission games. I've read a few accounts of journal entries from people that he wrestled with, one of whom was a catch wrestler. And Joseph Smith was neither able to pin nor submit this gentleman. I can't remember his name. And afterwards he wrote about it like, aha, the Mormon prophet couldn't throw me, couldn't pin me, couldn't submit me. Catch wrestling rules. So again, because of the experience, I'd give it to Abe Lincoln. But at the same time, the one way that Abe Lincoln lost was specifically Joseph Smith's forte, throwing a man from a standing position. Okay, so if Smith was able to survive, if he's able to survive the submission game, and he by all accounts was versed in submissions. He did use a straight ankle lock at one point to break an opponent's ankle. A lot of people don't know that you can use that straight ankle lock, the compression lock, the Achilles lock, to snap the shin in half if you apply enough pressure. But yes, he did this, and apparently he felt very remorseful about it. And yeah, long story. But again, not ignorant of submissions. But again, I don't suppose that Abraham Lincoln's other opponents were ignorant of submissions either. So again, I'm gonna have to give this one to Honest Abe. But the weight difference, it matters. But that reach difference, man, I mean, 4 inches, it doesn't sound like that much, but man, I made a video just recently with my friend Jawad Mahmoudi. He's like 6'4" about. I'm about 6'1". Doesn't sound like it's that much of a difference. You see us on camera, and it's like, this dude is a giant. So at the end of the day, man, it makes a difference. If Abe knew the Darce choke, 100% I'd go with him.
I love Abe Lincoln folklore. Like, once I found out that Abe Lincoln was a catch wrestler, because they never talk about it in the history books. They never talk about it in school. They never talk about it in any of his movies. Abe was like about that life. He was a fighter for sure. So I want to pull up this first photo, and I want to give you a story kind of behind it, or an issue that happened that was similar to it. So this is supposed to be, because back in the day, they didn't have cameras when Abe was around, but Abe was challenged to a bar fight. And when he was challenged to this bar fight, this was around the time that he was actually running for political office. So he was no longer really doing catch wrestling. He was focusing on politics. And so there was a group of brothers. There were 3 brothers who basically said, we think one of us can take you. Would you be willing to wrestle one of us, or each of us one at a time, at this local bar? And so Abe was like, look, I'm no longer doing that. That's not my thing anymore. I'm trying to clean up my image. I'm going to be a politician. Can't be just beating people up in the streets like that. So I have a friend of mine, and I vouch for him that he's great, and I'm pretty sure he could take you, but I'll be there just to support my friend. And so that's what happened. So Abe shows up to this bar, and the 3 brothers are there, and there's a big crowd of people waiting to see what's about to happen with this amazing catch wrestling match. And then the guy that Abe Lincoln vouched for didn't show up. He just wasn't there. And so so the brothers were like, oh, like, you're yellow, you didn't want to fight, like, you're scared, blah, blah, blah. So Abe, in his regular work clothes, he wasn't prepared. He rolls up his sleeves and commences to beating their ass one at a time in front of this entire crowd, which was at least 3 of his verified matches of him beating the living snot out of these 3 dudes for being disrespectful to Abe.
Like that scene from Fury where Bruce Lee walks into the Japanese dojo, and he's like, one at a time or all together.
But it's Abe, like in like a one-piece yellow and black jumper.
Oh man! Another thing I thought of while you were saying that, we need to bring back the term yellow. Like, are you yellow, son?
Yellow.
Man, yeah, maybe not. Maybe that's racist. I don't know, but
I think that I'm not exactly sure where the term
comes from.
It might be. It just sounds terrible. But like, that was like a term that people used back then. But
doesn't it though?
It's horrible. It sounds bad.
If you can say it with an old timey accent, maybe it works.
Yeah, you can get away with it with the right accent.
Now that I say it out loud, I'm like, maybe not. Maybe not.
Well, technically, the term comes from a chicken. Like, are you chicken? Are you yellow? Chickens are yellow. That's what it comes from. But this next photo is of Abe Lincoln choke slamming someone. And this
interesting.
This didn't
happen. So it's racist against chickens. Got it.
This didn't happen, obviously, with the story.
Yes.
But this is probably one of my favorite stories of Abe Lincoln. So this is just a photo example, but this obviously is not a photo of the incident. So Abe Lincoln, again, during his time running for presidency, he had to go around and give a lot of speeches. And so back in the day, you would go to like the town square or whatnot, and you'd stand at whatever podium was there for public speaking, and he would give his speeches to whoever would show up and listen. And Abe Lincoln was a popular dude, so a lot of people did show up to listen. But like any other politician, you have people who don't like you. And so there was a gentleman in the crowd who was heckling Abe, and Abe kept trying to finish his speech. He was trying to ignore the man, but the man kept going. So eventually Abe got sick and tired of it, walked down to the crowd, choke slammed the man, went back up and finished his speech. That's a boss move. So who do you have? I mean, I know that you have Abe Lincoln for this one, but I also had something for Joseph Smith. So obviously I'm an Abe Lincoln fan. Love Abe Lincoln stories. I think that those stories are always fascinating to me, is that a president could usually you have to be a little bit more timid, and you're not allowed to just go physically assault people. But back in the day, man, they threw down. Like, our president would beat your ass if you said some stupid shit. But Joseph Smith has a comic strip that I guess somebody did about one of his wrestling things. And I kind of want to read that off real fast. And so this is a little bit of Joseph Smith. And we can zoom in. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. The prophet Joseph Smith was a tall, strong man who grew up on a farm and spent many hours clearing the land and planting crops with his father and his brothers. And then we move on to 2, unless there's a delay. Oh, there we go. See, we get a little interaction. I appreciate you, Herbert, for all the work that you do. The prophet loves spending time with
loving the slideshow.
Exactly. The prophet loved spending time with young people. One of his favorite activities was wrestling. In those days, wrestling was mostly of trying to throw your opponent off balance. And so we move on to the next part of the story. A nice little slideshow of Joseph Smith watching people wrestle. One day, Joseph noticed a crowd, enthusiastic young men and boys. When he got closer, he saw that they were wrestling. He decided to join them. And then we can go and go to the next photo that I sent in. And that particular photo will finish up the story. And this is kind of why I think Joseph Smith might play dirty here. All right. So if we go up to like, I think Joseph Smith's going to be a dirty fighter. That's just my opinion. That's what I'm going with here. There's the
rules, and then there's the rules, Rob.
That is true. There was one especially large fellow who seemed to be the champion. He was proud of the fact that no one had thrown him, and he was eager to wrestle the prophet. And so he was ready to throw down with Joseph Smith. And then the match had scarcely, yeah, there we go, boom, begun when the champion found himself being carried by his collar and the seat of his pants to a nearby ditch where Joseph dropped him. Like, that's a douche move. Like, you couldn't just set him down where he was. You got to drop this dude in a ditch like that. This is rude. All right. And then, like, as the crowd yelled and cheered, Joseph helped the young man to his feet, patted him on his back. I apologize, a little blurry. And said, "You must not mind this when I'm with the boys. I make all the fun all the fun I can for them." And so he basically just humiliated this guy for the fact of the crowd. And although he was the first president of the church and very busy man, Joseph Smith knew that taking the time to be friendly with others was important. I don't know how that ending fits with grabbing a man and humiliating him on purpose by tossing him in a ditch. I don't see how those go together. I don't get it. Maybe you can help me.
Oh, well, that is amazing, man. That is amazing. I got to make a video about that. Throw a dude in the ditch. It's very important to be friendly to people. Throw them in a ditch in a friendly way. And I got to say, like, Joseph Smith is a way different type of religious leader than most of us think of when we think of a religious leader. Like, you hear like prophet or church president or something, we tend to think of like, stuffy dudes in ties or the Pope wearing his robes, speaking holy things and never ever doing anything wrong in public. And man, Joseph Smith was so radically different from that. Like he liked a roughhouse. Like after church on Sundays, he got a lot of criticism from like pastors and other religious leaders in his community. They were like, "What are you doing? You're wrestling in the dirt after church in front of the church house. What is wrong with you? This is the day of the Lord." And Joseph Smith would be like, "I'll take you next." And of course, they wouldn't take him up on his wrestling challenges, but
you want some
he was a way different type of guy, man.
Yard.
But at the same time, it's like I kind of wish church could be a little bit more like that, a little more laid back and a little less stiff around the collar, if you will. Because some people just take themselves a little bit too seriously.
Yeah, man. Like, you might as well relax. None of us are making it out alive. So you might as well enjoy life. But I'm with you. I'm going to go with Abe Lincoln. I think Abe Lincoln takes the cake here. I think that if based off of that story alone, I think Joseph Smith might be playing a little bit of dirty pool. And I think that he might be trying to get one over on Abe, a little bit of like elbow here where he shouldn't have, maybe a little headbutt action, maybe try to get Abe Lincoln into the ditch himself. I don't know.
It's entirely possible.
So
now you can sucker punch someone in a pub, but I don't think anybody's being sucker grabbed by the seat of the pants and thrown into a ditch, except perhaps that young man from that comic strip. Definitely not Abe Lincoln. Not going to happen to him.
No, I don't think it's going to happen to Abe. But let's go ahead and go to the next one. Let's go to the main event. Let's go ahead and pull up that tail of the tape.
Sweet.
All right, so the tail of the tape is obviously a big fight coming up, Aljamain Sterling versus Petr Yan. Aljamain Sterling is 32 years old. He's 5'7" and weighs about 135 pounds. His reach is about 71 inches with a record of 20 wins, 3 losses, 2 of those wins coming by knockout, 3 wins by submission, and 9 decisions. Note, he won the last 6 of his last 6 fights and beat Petr Yan by disqualification, which we'll talk about that for sure. Petr Yan, he's age 29, which he looks much older than that to me. No offense to you, Petr Yan, but he just looks like he actually looks older than Aljamain Sterling. Height, 5'7", he weighs about 135 pounds. His reach is only 67 inches, which is a drastic difference between him and Sterling. That 4 inches matters. Just ask anyone's wife and or girlfriend.
It definitely does.
Record is 16 wins with 2 losses. 7 of his wins are by knockout, 1 by submission, and 8 by decision. So both of these guys really do take a lot of their fights to deep water. They are used to going to decision. They're used to going the full fights. Obviously, Sterling has a much better record at submissions, whereas Petr Yan is more of a knockout artist. And he was absolutely dominating Sterling before the DQ. It was a lopsided fight if I'd ever seen one. Let's discuss. What do you think? Who you got and why?
You know, my gut right off the bat tells me Petr Yan, simply because, we saw him dominating Aljamain Sterling at the same time. We have to ask ourselves why. Is this something that would have played out 10 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, something like that? Or is it one of those things where maybe he landed a shot that most of us didn't really notice early on that perhaps hurt Aljamain Sterling in a way that, the casual audience isn't aware of? And if it wasn't for that, I don't want to say lucky punch, because I really hate that term. It makes it sound like striking is not an act of skill, which it totally is. But
sure.
at the same time, I've had the experience of, competing with the same guy a bunch of times, and it plays out completely differently each and every time. So it's very hard to say, but I'm going to go with my gut and say Petr Yan, I think he could probably put on a repeat performance of what he did before without the DQ.
For sure. I think that Petr Yan takes this as well. I think there was a lot that was done. And like you said, there could have been a shot that deterred Sterling from being able to have his best performance that night because of something that happened early on in the fight. I mean, he was getting whooped, so that's very possible. But at the end of the day, I think that he was still being outskilled no matter how we say why. He was still being outskilled. I think Petr Yan made a terrible mistake. I don't know why it seems that he would do that. Some people said that it was a communication barrier, but at the end of the day, every fighter knows the rules, especially at that level. I don't care what language you speak. Somebody reiterated the rules to you, and he made a mistake. And that could have been because of adrenaline. He could have been in the heat of the moment. He wasn't thinking, or he wasn't thinking clearly. He was just like, what do I do? I feel like I'm just standing here. Fuck it, throw a knee, and then he kneed him. But then Sterling took what a lot of people would say is the easy way out. This is something that happens a lot in fighters, and this is not something that you usually see in a title fight, though. This is probably one of the first times I'd ever seen a title fight where the belt was exchanged specifically because of this type of disqualification. And so, I mean, I'm not saying that DQ won't happen, but it's so rare to happen on this high level of skill with these type of fighters at that level with a belt on the line. And then all of a sudden you have somebody like Sterling who has to make this drastic decision. Was he really that hurt to where he could not continue the fight? Or did he take advantage of the game and the system and go, you know what, this would be an easy win for me. Let me go ahead and take it and ride this out. And I think a lot of people think he could have continued because of how dramatic he was being and that he could have kept going in the fight. But at the same time, I believe that games are meant to be played. And this is a game for your career. And so if he decided to take that L, how long would it take him to get a rematch? How long would it take him to climb back up the ladder, if ever? How many other opportunities would he have to be able to get back to being
That's a great question, man.
A title fight? So he made a good business decision, no matter what we say, whether he really needed to take that stop or not. That was a smart business decision because now they get to replay it. And I think that that's super important here because now, hopefully, we'll get a great fight that will be a definitive answer to who wins.
Oh, absolutely. It's really important to understand that good fighters do not stand still. And it is incredibly difficult to catch up with somebody when you're not on their level, especially if they're active. And again, we have no reason to believe that Petr Yan is not doing that, that he is not pushing himself and trying to improve and evolve. Man, I mentioned my friend Jawad before, really tall guy, is in my mind because I sparred with him the other day, and he absolutely kicked my butt all over the place, made me look like a small child trying to fight his dad. First time I sparred with him, I thought, aha, I got him figured out. Next time I'll get him. And suddenly it was like fighting a whole different guy because he adapted to my adaptations. And I thought, okay, I got him figured out now. I sparred with him again a few weeks later. I couldn't play catch up because, again, he's evolving. He's evolving as fast as I am, right? So I think Petr Yan's in the same boat, man. He's a hard-working dude. He's the type of dude who is going to outwork you. And this is one of the things that most people who haven't really competed, not just fought, but competed, do not understand the power of work, being outworked, not just out-techniqued. Like anybody can learn technique, but to outwork somebody, that is, it's not just humiliating, it is soul-crushing. And I think Yan has that potential.
For sure. I think that Yan definitely has that potential. And what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and pull up their last previous records. So let's go ahead and pull up Sterling's last couple fights so we can kind of take a look at that real quick. If we look, obviously Sterling's last win was beating Petr Yan via disqualification. But if you start looking down this list, I mean, Corey Sandhagen, Pedro Munoz, let's keep scrolling down for me. If you kind of look, you know, he's either getting the submission or it's going to decision. I mean, if he gets a submission, as you can see, it's fairly early on from what I can tell. I mean, he did get a KO, but that was his last loss was getting knocked out via KO, which again, this is Petr Yan's specialty. Like he knocks people out cold often. And if he doesn't, it's going to decision. It's like he's like the Babe Ruth of little people. Like he's 135 pounds, but man, he's swinging for the fence. And if he doesn't get it, it's going into deep water. So, but if you look at Yan's last couple fights, his last couple fights are extremely impressive. I mean, obviously he lost to Aljamain Sterling. In order to be able to get back to a title fight again, he had to have another fight. Unfortunately, not like boxing, you don't get an automatic rematch. You know, he won against Jose Aldo, Uriah Faber. I mean, John Dodson. We're talking about fantastic fighters that he has fought.
Absolutely.
And, you know, of course, a lot of these are via decision, but still, he knocked out Uriah Faber. And Uriah Faber, again, is no scrub. So when it comes down to it, again, solidifying Petr Yan. And I think that maybe you're with me on that, right? You're with Petr Yan on that?
Absolutely. At the same time, I think Aljamain Sterling is winning in a different way. Like not winning this fight per se, but he's winning in a different way. You mentioned he made a wise and calculated business decision when he took that knee and he rolled on the ground and chose not to continue. But after the fight, ex post facto, his social media essentially playing a troll a little bit, playing the heel a little bit. He has been selling this fight nonstop. I don't know if the man is going to get a cut of the pay-per-view, but he probably should, considering the post-fight performance he's been doing to get the eyeballs on this fight and to get the fans either with him or wanting to see him knocked out again, but in a legitimate fashion. Like he wants to be that guy that you love to hate.
I mean, it works. It's something that a lot of people have done. It's nothing new. Muhammad Ali did it back in the day. McGregor,
he learned that from Gorgeous George, man.
McGregor, was one of the top paid athletes in the world at one point. And so I think that when it comes down to it, you can use that to your advantage to make money. I want to go to the presser just because I know our connection has been kind of rough today, and we might not have a good opportunity of this beautiful, clean connection that we have right now. So I just want you to take the time to kind of let everybody know a little bit about you, where they can find you, what you have going on, coming up, all that good stuff. Let us know what's up with Ramsey Dewey.
All right, I'm Ramsey Dewey. I am in Shanghai, China, trained at a couple of gyms here, the Extreme Fight Lab in Shanghai, and also the Animal MMA and Fitness Gym. Come check us out if you're here. My YouTube channel, Ramsey Dewey on YouTube. Got thousands of videos there about all kinds of martial arts related stuff, etc. Find me on Instagram, also at Ramsey Dewey, and I think I've got a Facebook page or something like that. So that's me on the internet.
All right, man. Well, I personally love your content. Obviously, nothing but support from me for the stuff that you put out. I think it's very well thought out. I think it's very entertaining, and I think that it's very educational for people who might be a little newer to the martial arts industry, and they're not aware that there are scam artists or people putting out false information. And you do a great job of breaking that down and showing an alternative and showing like, this is why this won't work, but this is a better way of doing it. And I really respect that.
Thank you.
I always
appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I mean, fuck. It's there's not a lot of us doing that particular thing. And so it's nice to see other people really pushing that, because I think with the next generation of martial artists, they're growing up with the internet. And so they're getting a lot of information via internet. A lot of people who have become very famous for being self-defense gurus, if you will, there's a big portion of them that are just full of shit. And just because somebody might be charismatic, or just because somebody might look a certain way or act a part, doesn't mean that they're not lying. And it doesn't mean that they're not taking advantage of people just for the betterment of their own pocketbook. And so it's really nice to see other people out there in the world putting out information that just lets people make a better informed decision on their own, instead of going in blind and not knowing the very nuanced world of the martial arts industry. So I think it's cool as fuck. And I got to say, I appreciate people like you, man.
Likewise, man. Likewise. Love your work, Rob.
I do what I can. There's no I in team. I go out there, give 110%. But I got to say, I always end the show the same way. I have something called the Martial Moment, and I find a clip.
Let's do it.
Of the person that I have on the show that I find hilarious. And so let's go ahead and let that roll real fast. And this is your Martial Moment.
Let's go.
And now your daily self-defense tip, brought to you by some dude in a camouflage shirt so you know he's legit. Pull the knife into your groin directly and, wait, what?
I will bring up my hands, signaling surrender and submission to put my attacker at ease.
Good first step.
What he does not suspect is that I will simultaneously push the knife away with one hand, push the wrist down with the other, and then pull the knife into my groin.
It's a bold strategy.
Are
What
you really trying to hurt
could
yourself?
possibly go
I was just
wrong?
joking, bro.